Welcome to The Kingdom, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics and a land defended by Sir Ross's Knights. Now here's your host, Rocco Geppi.
Hello Knights Nation, Rocco Geppi here for The Kingdom Podcast, Season 2, Episode number 8. And on today's show, we're focusing on men's lacrosse. Big changes in the spring, and after the NJCAA season was canceled due to COVID-19, head men's lacrosse coach Tim King resigned and is now the top assistant and defensive coordinator at NCAA Division II Flagler College under former Knights head coach Brian Duncan. The Saints are in their inaugural season and will play their first game in the spring. To fill the position, Knights athletic administrator Greg Whitcomb brought back a familiar face in Shawn Burke. Burke was at the helm from 2009 to 2017 and led the Knights to multiple region titles, national semifinal appearances, and 3 national runner-up finishes. Our own Rebecca Plantholt caught up with Coach Burke for this episode. In the largest portion of today's episode, I catch up with former Knight Tyler Oblong, a young man who exemplifies what it means to be a men's lacrosse student-athlete here in the Kingdom. We'll have that interview later, but first, let's get you to Rebecca Plantholt's interview with head men's lacrosse coach Shawn Burke here on the Kingdom Podcast.
First of all, we want to welcome Coach Shawn Burke for the men's lacrosse program here back to Essex. This is your second go-around here at Essex, so how has this time been a little different than the first, and what are some things that are still the same?
Sure. Well, it's great to be back, Rebecca. Thanks for having me. Obviously, as far as what's the same, that the people that really make Essex a special place, and I think are mainly still intact. Yourself and Greg Whitcomb and Rocco Geppi, Brian Farrell, Joe Sperato, Dave Evans. It's a lot of great people, and that's why we really enjoyed coaching there. For our first 7-year stint. So that's been great. I'd say, probably what's different is kind of operating in the current COVID environment, has been a challenge. And so that has kind of thrown, a lot of our standard plans in the fall kind of out the window, and we've had to obviously adapt.
And as you mentioned those challenges, can you share with the viewers some of those challenges and how you and the coaching staff are combating them?
Sure. So obviously, because of kind of guidelines and protocols, we've had to operate in small groups, this fall, like a lot of programs and sports around the country. So that has been a challenge, and is obviously different from a normal fall ball, kind of the group sizes and what we're able to do with the kids. That has been a, that's been a challenge. And I think when you break them down into smaller groups, and then, we're putting together multiple practice plans for the different groups is a challenge instead of one big practice plan for everybody. So that is probably the biggest, the biggest change and the biggest challenge with dealing with COVID right now.
And so many things have changed during all of this COVID challenges, as we like to call them. So the recruiting process is probably one of those things as well. So how has that changed for you and your coaching staff this year?
Yeah, I could probably talk a long time about that. So, we came on in April and really kind of hit the ground running with the 20 class. We feel like we brought in a really good class in a short time. We're kind of back on a more normal schedule right now, and we're knee deep into the 21 class. We signed a couple of kids, and we're already into the 22s. I think the effect that the some of the eligibility changes at the NCAA level have filtered down to us and have made it more challenging. The landscape's a little bit different. I think kids are getting recruited later and making decisions later, so that those changes have kind of filtered down to us and made things a little more challenging as well.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to how you were handling fall practices, but how is this, besides your group sizes, how is that kind of changing how you guys operate in the fall? I know we're not competing in the fall. We don't have our scrimmages like we usually do. So how do we operate and keep the guys focused and keep developing?
Yeah, it's a challenge, really. Like, I think the key word that we try to use is connectivity, right? We're trying to keep the guys connected and engaged in what we're doing. A lot of them are taking classes, at least partially virtually. and we're not able to practice quite as much as we would in a normal fall. So all the way back to the summer, we spent a lot of time doing Zoom meetings with them outside of our normal practice schedule, because obviously there's no limits in how many kids we can meet with, at a time in Zoom. So we generally have at least one extra defensive Zoom a week and one extra offensive Zoom a week, in addition to academic Zooms that we do with Will Shaw, who's our advisor. So those things, I think, in addition to the in-person practice schedule, I hope we've done a good job keeping the guys kind of engaged and built the relationships that we need to.
Yeah, I really like that idea there of connectivity and keeping them all engaged. So much is unknown right now, but what are you most looking forward to in the spring season?
Well, I mean, I hope we're looking forward to playing. Obviously everybody's kind of in the same boat. I think just like everybody, right? You return to normalcy. Kind of everything we do right now, you have to take extra time to think about and plan. And so it is. I think just getting back to a sense of normalcy and hopefully being able to play would be great. I mean, I think what we've tried to do is, because of the uncertainty, we've tried to just look at things not so big picture and try to take it day by day and really focus on how we can help the kids and how we can help develop them, just today, and not worry too much about what may or may not happen 3 months from now. I think that's really key, and to try to keep them on track, especially academically, is super important, so that they have, they have opportunities, beyond Essex, because that's really our number one priority.
Absolutely. And we know it's still early, but from what you've seen so far while you've been out recruiting, since you have recruited most of the kids that we're seeing, how would you compare the talent and competitiveness this year as to some of the other teams that you've had in years past?
Yeah, I normally don't like to compare teams a whole lot, but I can say that the competitiveness in practice has been really good. I mean, I think the kind of the competitive character that we have as a group is pretty high. We have some kids that I think have already developed into good leaders. Gavin Bloom, Will Schmidt, Patrick Ruffalo. I mean, we have some kids that are, in practice on a daily basis are, pretty verbal guys and get after people. And I think have ratcheted up the intensity level, which is good. The enthusiasm's been really good. So I like what we see so far. It's hard to tell exactly where we are, without playing any teams, in different jerseys. But that'll come. And I think for right now, it's more kind of trying to develop and reset our culture to, to where we want it long term.
Of course. Well, thank you, Coach Burke, for joining us today and showing the viewers a little bit of what your time back here on Essex is like. For Shawn Burke, I'm Rebecca Plantholt. Now back to you, Rocco.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great job with that interview. So Burke back in the kingdom after 4 years. He talked about the challenges to practices and recruiting during this COVID-19 pandemic. Small group practices leads to multiple practice plans because the entire group can't be on the field at one time and in the same area. So the smaller practices make for a little bit more work for the coaches. The staff hit the ground running, though, when they came in April. They recruited the 2020 class hard. Changes to the NCAA level also made things challenging. Fall practices, Coach Burke talked about one of the keys was connectivity, staying connected, for example, with Zoom calls, both academically and team strategy sessions. He's looking forward to playing in the spring and getting back to normal, but are currently focused on taking things day by day to keep the team on track both inside and outside the classroom. Burke said the competitiveness looks good with this team. He has some good student-athlete leaders, and the enthusiasm has been really good as well. Some of what Burke brings up in that interview are a few of the many things that define Tyler Oblong's time here at Essex. A member of the Knights for 3 seasons, one as a redshirt, Oblong epitomized what it means to be a Knight. I sat down recently with Tyler to reminisce and catch up. Here's my interview with Tyler Oblong. Rocco Geppi here for the Kingdom Podcast with our next installment of Once a Night, Always a Night. And we're taking it back to 2014 through 2016. Those are the seasons, but he was actually here a little bit longer, came in the fall of 2013 with former men's lacrosse student athlete Tyler Oblong. Tyler, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Rocco? Good.
Good. So what's going on? What are you up to these days?
Oh man, I'm still down here, feet in the sand, down here in Melbourne, in the same city where I graduated from. I'm still down here coaching, doing what I love, just on the sideline now, the clipboard.
It's very cool. I expect that right about now in this interview, we're starting to get comments on here to you because we're in that current transition from fall to winter in the Baltimore metropolitan area. So we are not feeling sand between our toes, and in some areas they're going to be having some snow soon. So you're not going to get much likeness on that one. But you got to do what you got to do.
Oh yeah.
So Tyler was here, like I said, with the Knights, came in the fall of 2013 and played 2 seasons with us his freshman year. The team is the national runner-up in his redshirt freshman year, and then they go to the national Final Four in his sophomore year. So before all of that happened, Tyler, let's kind of start at the beginning. Why did you choose Essex? What was your recruiting process like?
I think we all have a reason why we came there. Mine in particular was a second chance in the classroom. I wasn't able to prove myself early on in my high school career, so I had a lot to make up. So, the process was, look at junior college lacrosse. I was originally from Ohio, so where are those JUCOs that are playing? And they're all on the East Coast, so I knew I was traveling. So, I looked at the top 4, and I saw Essex up in there. You have OCC, NASA, and Genesee. So after that, I looked at location where I'd like to live. So definitely Baltimore interests me right away. It's not as cold as upstate and everything like that. And then, you know what, I saw the 2013 OCC Essex game on YouTube, I think it was. And I mean, that game was a 19-18 shootout at Essex. So, you watch that game and you say, hey, man, there could be a shift here. It's anyone's game. And, after visiting campus and everything, it just the tradition, hearing all about it and everything like that it's kind of easy decision. I think I committed early in my senior year to Essex.
Yeah, we're a little biased, but we think it's an easy decision too. So you kind of touched on it here a minute ago. You redshirted your first year. Talk about why you redshirted and then how it benefited you both on and off the field.
Yeah, transitioning from high school to college is never easy, and then when it's 500 miles away, makes it a little bit harder. So I wasn't really smart early on. I kind of took 12 credits in my fall, my first semester, and I struggled with one, and it didn't work out the way I wanted to. So I kind of fell under that credit line, and I had a tough talk with my parents and that winter break. Do I come home? Do I find a 9-to-5 job? Do I give up? But no, I just decided to suck it up, work hard, just working silent, and there was no more second chances. I mean, my back was clearly against the wall here, and so I just kind of made the best out of it. Took all the scout team reps, took every advantage to get better. It helped me mature, helped me grow up as a person on the field. So I think it was ultimately really beneficial for me in the end of the day.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you come out on the other end of that stronger. Just to kind of branch off of that real quick, what would your advice be to lacrosse students coming out their senior year this year?
Yeah, I mean, when you make that transition, it's tough, and I was maybe afraid to ask too many questions early on. My eyes were wide. There's a lot of talent on the team, so you look at that and you're like, man, where am I lining up? You sometimes kind of go silent. So just be confident early on, ask as many questions as you want, and just kind of find your role early on.
Understood. Good advice there from Tyler Oblong, the former Knights men's lacrosse student athlete. Your redshirt freshman season, so you do what you got to do. You make it through. You get eligible. Not only does the team make it to the NJCAA National Final Four, but we're hosting it that year. What was that season like leading up to the final weekend? We're going to get into the championships here in just a second, but leading up to that weekend, what was that season like?
Yeah, I mean, going into that year, you're just kind of excited to get going. And I remember Coach Burke coming in and telling us, we're hosting, boys, and we kind of knew that we had to represent. Expectations were high, and we knew we had a ton of weapons in the room. We just had to put it together. And we had news that we were going to get a couple solid D1 transfers mid-season coming in. So I mean, that just amped it up even another level. But we had to have that chemistry. We didn't have them in the fall, so we're throwing in 2 new pieces right away. Our defense was just, lights out. You have Max, Rutgers, Sid, Towson. Tommy down low still went Delaware. Soliday at OSU. You have Jimmy who went to Towson, and you have a couple of good D middies as well with me down there. And that's a really good defense. Every single game we were holding guys to low numbers. So that season was really fun. You have a lot of fun games in there, a lot of Region 20 games that we just clearly dominated. I think it was Hartford. It was like a 10-goal game. We beat them by ACC. We beat them by like 8 or so. And Howard, I think we went down there and it was 23-4. I looked it up. So you have all those key wins in the region, and then that just kind of amped it up going into that Final Four weekend.
All right. Well, we have more to talk about that Final Four weekend, but before we get to that, we have 2 things to take care of. One, we're going to hit a break here real quick, and when we get back on the other side of that break, Tyler, we got a little surprise for you here on the Kingdom Podcast, the podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Let's talk about college.
Times have changed.
We've changed.
I refuse to accept an education that comes with a mountain of crippling debt.
No longer will I stay stuck in a job because college has no time for me.
I will not confuse a fancy name for a quality education. Sorry, Pops.
Let's talk practical.
Let's talk flexible.
Let's talk smart education.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online at ccbcmd.edu and see what you can be.
All right, we are back. The podcast here, the Kingdom Podcast, Season 2, and we are with Tyler Oblong, 2013 to 2016 men's lacrosse student athlete. And we have, believe we're trying to make sure that we have him on the line here. Is our special guest, are you able to hear us? Let's see. Is our special guest there? All right, so there he is. We have our special guest on the line. Tyler, I think you remember this guy. This is head coach Shawn Burke.
Hey, how's it going, Coach?
Coach Oblong, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great.
So, Coach, we were just talking about getting ready to transition to our next question here, but we were talking about the road to the Final Four in the 2015 season when Essex hosted. And Tyler just mentioned that, when you had told him that we were hosting, the team kind of felt like they had to put it into another gear. Do you remember that conversation, or around that time letting them know and kind of seeing a little bit of a different swagger on the field?
I don't necessarily remember a different swagger. I think their focus obviously took a step to the next level. I think we all felt like, kind of a greater obligation to, number one, make sure we were there, and number two, to make sure that we had we had a group that was going to really represent the school well, since we were playing on our home field, and no doubt they did that.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys did so much that weekend, and not only, representing the school with pride in the championship game, but, for me, it was a big deal because that was our first live stream sporting event in Essex history. It was what our 2014, 2015 season was gearing up to, was being there for that championship. Things went really well, and, we appreciated the intensity from the team. Was getting ready to hit on to this next question. And Coach, I know your time is limited, but I'll ask you this question, and then then if you got a scoot, we understand. I'll get Tyler's answer on the other side. But we talk about the semifinal game against Nassau. They had beaten you guys about a month before by 7 goals, and then you not only returned the favor, but you returned the favor with a 1-goal win in the national semifinals. Take us through that battle with Nassau.
Yeah, we had played them earlier in the year, and they had kind of jumped on us early, and things snowballed, and we just we had battled, but when you get down by that much early in the game, sometimes it's hard to get back into it. But we took some lessons from that game, and I think we tried to apply those, when we saw them again. I think we got done that game and felt like, as coaches, we could have done a better job with some tactical things and schematic things, and we were hopeful to see them again later. It's interesting, they had one of the all-time greats playing on that team, Josh Byrne, who plays in the Premier Lacrosse League now. And we really we didn't shut him down, but we tried to slow him down as much as we can in that game. And we threw some different defensive looks at him and tried to take him out of rhythm. And our face-off guys and our offensive group, that was a high-scoring game. Our offensive group really had a big day that day as well.
All right. Well, before we let you go here, anything you want to say to Tyler? You got him here.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, go get on the end line. Let's run some sprints.
Maybe some 115s as well.
115s. There you go. In all seriousness, Tyler's really one of my all-time favorite players, and I think as you coach a long time, what you realize is, your favorite guys aren't always necessarily, the guys that score 5 goals a game or the guys that are All-Americans at whatever position that they play. They're really the guys that are like the most dedicated to the team and will do anything you ask. And I know that's a cliche, but especially in today's world, that's not common. Mm-hmm. And Tyler was like that when he played for us. And honestly, Tyler's been like that as an alum, being supportive of the program since he's left. So, I would just say that, if I could coach, 50 Tyler Oblongs every year, it would be great. And he's really the model for, what we look for as a student athlete at Essex for sure.
That's awesome. That's great praise there, Coach. What do you think about that, Tyler?
Thanks, Coach. I really appreciate that. And I enjoyed my time at Essex. And, all my coaches have been super big role models for me. And, you just take every little bit from each coaching style, and definitely taken a lot from Coach Burke and kind of translate over to my players. So
it's good stuff right there, guys. Coach Burke, we appreciate you stopping by the Kingdom Podcast here today. I'm sure we'll have you on in the future in a number of different facets. I know you're a busy man, so thanks for stopping by.
Great. Thanks for having me, and great talking to Tyler.
All right, there he is, your head men's lacrosse coach, Shawn Burke. You will see him on the sidelines. You'll hear him on the podcast, and you'll see him on social media, very active with the Knights account and his account as well. Always scouting and looking for the next talent. So we certainly appreciate his presence here today. So Tyler, I'll give you the same question. Talk to me about that. Give me the player perspective, if you will, on that game in the national semifinal against Nassau.
Yeah, no, like you said, Rocco, and like Coach said, we went up to Nassau that year, and that's a tough trip going up on the island, and we didn't underestimate Josh Burns. I mean, that guy, was watching him on film, you're like, holy crap, he is he's wearing these bright orange cleats, and I mean, his ability to just catch people in transition and beeline it for the pipe. And, I mean, he made the guy's money worth for that one. So, I mean, Josh Burns was a hell of a player. And then going into that Final Four weekend, we schematically just changed a couple little things. And I think that helped us out. And that game was just back and forth the whole game. And then I think we kind of started to pull away by like maybe three or so at the end. Mm-hmm. And, they always had this little chant. It was NASA. And we were kind of feeling ourselves. We're up 3. And I think a couple of those guys, I think I heard us go, Essex. And I was like, shh, guys, the game is not over yet, and it wasn't, because they get 2 goals just like that with Josh Burns, I think. And then it's a 1-goal game. I think they had the ball. They call a timeout, and, we held them. And that was just kind of, the guys rushed the field, and it was a pretty cool moment. Crowd was
It was
crazy.
probably in my 6+ years being there, and even longer, 11 years as an announcer. It was the most nerve-wracking game I have ever attended. I was up in the booth because I'm keeping an eye on the stream, and that's all brand new, so I'm making sure that CMA on that. And you guys were up 17-11 at one point, and over the next 3.5 minutes, Nassau goes on a 5-goal run. And then at the end, if you remember, not only did they have the last shot, but they had the last shot with like 6 seconds on the clock. So they call that timeout. They had it at the far side of you guys, near side us, and that shot goes wide right. I remember it. I mean, it was like I was just out there this morning. And the explosion of joy and everything from the sideline, and the guys rushing the field. I mean, we still have in our the new pamphlet for men's lacrosse, the recruiting pamphlet. It's that picture of you guys rushing the field, and it was definitely both a nerve-wracking and exciting moment for Knights Nation. I can tell you that. All right. Well, we have more questions for Tyler Oblong. We're going to hit a quick break. This is just a 15-second break, so stay with us. You're listening to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed, and I say no to an education at the cost of crippling debt, because paying off student loans for the next 30 years is not in my financial plans.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
We are back. Rocco Geppi alongside Tyler Oblong on this next installment of Once a Night, Always a Night. And Tyler, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit with this question, because we just finished up the conversation with the semifinals against Nassau, just an epic game there. The next day we take on Onondaga, and unfortunately fall to the lasers. Not something you want to do ever, but definitely not something you want to do on your home field when you're hosting. Just a very talented group that year. Not that we weren't, but I think, in setting this question up, I think what I think about is that year, and I mean no disrespect here, but that year Onondaga faced in my opinion, a Genesee team that wasn't Genesee that we would come to know and we know now. I think they were still making that climb. And then of course the next year they would upset Onondaga for the national championship. But I think Onondaga had a little bit easier road to the championship. So my question is this: I've asked several members of the team in the past, and I'll ask you, if there was an off day between the Nassau Onondaga games, in your opinion, do you think Essex wins its 3rd national title?
Well, I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, you have to give respect to Daga and what they did that weekend and what they took care of. But yeah, I mean, you have to say this tournament favors that 1 seed if the top 3 are just that good. Mm-hmm. I mean, they walk off the field with a 17-6 win, and you say, how much did those starters actually play, and are they tired? And the tournament's back-to-back, unfortunately, days. And that hurt. I mean, that you saw the fatigue kind of hit us mid-game. I mean, we jump out to a 1-0 lead against OCC early on, and then we hit pipe. I mean, I remember watching the film. I think I watched this game in the fall. I think it's maybe the second time I've watched it since happening. And it's crazy how many pipes we had, how many chances we had early on to, go up 3, go up 4. And I think if we ride that out, and then I think we give up 3 in a row, we're down 1-3, and we hang tough through that second quarter. We come out of halftime only down 3, and Cam Stone nets one, and we're right in it. We have a 2-goal game in the third quarter on our home field. And then you just see them running down the field, and you see our guys just not catching up to him. And you're like, man, that guy, I know he's just as fast as that guy. And, the gas, I think, just finally ran out then.
Understood. You played at Essex as a D midi, played on the wings on faceoffs, and you were on the man down unit. Explain to the listeners for the lay person that watches lacrosse. I'd be in the same boat if I hadn't been around lacrosse for the last decade. I can tell you that. But explain to the listeners what your role was on the team in those aspects of what you were playing on the field.
Right. Yeah. So came from Ohio. It's not traditionally a hotbed per se. So I had my chances. I was a 100-goal scorer in high school. Coming into Essex, eyes wide. There's a lot of talent on this field. A lot of big guys, midfielders, and I just had to find my role early on. And I think I had a conversation with Coach Burke. Like, look, where do you see me? Like, he's like, look, I need a D midi, like someone on the wing, someone that's going to grind, blue collar guy, and coming from the Midwest, that's kind of fit my role. So I just found a way to get playing time doing that and kind of made a living out of it and carried it on the next level eventually.
Very good. Very good. We'll keep along that line there. How did Essex prepare you for the next level? We're gonna talk more about your playing here in just a second, but going from Essex to the NCAA, how did Essex prepare you for that? Not only on the field, but all the way around.
I mean, you had to learn on your own quick. I was 500 miles away, no dorm, no real cafeteria. Besides, we had Subway in a couple different places there, but you had to be responsible quick, adult up quick. You had to be accountable, and we had a bunch of time, so we were able to dedicate a lot of time to our craft on the field. We didn't have a lot of distractions on campus, so no fraternities, nothing like that. So it was like, you had your 50 best friends in a field in the classroom, and you knew you guys weren't there to just goof off. You had to get stuff done. You had to take it seriously, and so it just kind of build leadership going to that next level. And you aren't going into that next level as a freshman. You're going in as a junior. You're already grown up. You've experienced a lot.
Understood. Yeah, that your sophomore season, your third year there, I think that was the season that was most I don't know what word to use, but I was always I had my head on a swivel because the house that you were staying in that year, and maybe it was the whole time, but I specifically remember that year, was literally 2 blocks up the street from my house. So I was always, I would actually change my route to come home down Middle River Road to pass your house on the way home, just to make sure you guys were minding your P's and Q's.
Yeah, we turned that house was a good house. We had a lot of good roommates there, and we had our fun.
All right. So you leave the Kingdom. You're recruited. You are recruited to NCAA Division II Florida Tech. Tell us how that opportunity came about, and then once you got that experience, what it was like to play there as a Panther.
Yeah. No. In the back of my mind, I kind of wanted to end up in Florida. I knew there was a lot of lacrosse down there, a lot of Division II lacrosse. But I looked everywhere. Kind of looked at all different levels, all different geographic locations. And ultimately, I mean, Coach Mark Penn came up, recruited about 4 or 5 of us from Essex. And, he's an Essex guy, so you kind of listen to Essex guys. You trust them. They've kind of been through the process as well. And Division II offers scholarship money. So, I mean, that was a huge, huge thing for me, being in school already 3 years. How was I going to afford my next 2 years? So I had to look at that. And so then I went on my visit, and I mean, the location was ideal, sleepy little beach town, academics, tier 1 academics. It's actually the number 1, I'm not an engineer, but it's the number 1 engineering school that's non-Ivy in recent reports. So, I mean, it's you're surrounded by smart individuals that just make a great team. And I had a great experience. I redshirted my first year there. Unfortunately, I got injured, had a medical red shirt. But I just kind of used that same adversity I faced at Essex to power me through that. And, as a 6-year player, and I wouldn't take anything less than that. I mean, I enjoyed my time there. We beat Tampa for the first time anyone in our conference has beat Tampa down there. I mean, we had a really nice season, 7-1 conference record that following season. And it was a great time.
Very good, very good. We are talking with Tyler Oblong here, the former men's lacrosse student athlete. And Tyler, we before we let you go, we ask every one of our guests this question. So we're going to ask you, give me your top 3 moments from your time at CCBC Essex.
Yeah, I think number one is we talked about it a lot, that Final Four game against NASA. Nothing compares to that. That game was just unreal emotionally and energy and everything. The whole crowd was crazy there that day. And I think my second favorite memory would be, we worked a lot of football games for the high schools around there. So I think we were all just kind of meshing during that time and kind of enjoying ourselves off the field. And then we also did a lot of stuff with developmental children group. And then we actually started a Colgate Elementary program. And all those times, I think you saw all the guys just kind of act a little different than they did on the field. And it was just a real cool experience being with all them through that process. And then thirdly, I think committing with my four Essex teammates on that day to Florida Tech in the office, and just kind of looking at Coach Burke and like, man, I finally did it. I'm kind of getting out of here, but just because, you're there 3 years, you're just waiting for that next level. You see all your friends leave every year. So that was just an awesome experience as well.
Excellent. Really good times, really good moments there. Tyler, we appreciate you coming on the show, and, try not to be a stranger. We'll get you on here anytime we can.
Yeah, Rocco, thanks. Appreciate it. I'll try to get up for a game this year, hopefully.
You got it. There he is, Tyler Oblong. He was in the Kingdom 2013 through 2016, a member of a national runner-up team, national Final Four team, and he goes on to play at an NCAA Division II Florida Tech. We're going to take a quick break here. When we get back, we're going to close out this episode of the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed, and I say no to an education at the cost of crippling debt, because paying off student loans for the next 30 years is not in my financial plans.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
Times have changed, and I will not stay stuck in a job because college has no time for me. I will not let a limited schedule limit me.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
We are back. Rocco Geppi with you on the Kingdom Podcast, Season 2, Episode number 8. And you just heard my interview with former Knights men's lacrosse student athlete Tyler Oblong, with special guest Shawn Burke popping into the interview. And to give you an idea just how much Oblong meant to this team and the impression that he left, we heard Burke say that not only was Oblong one of his favorite Knights of all time, but he wishes he could coach 50 Tyler Oblongs. And that's saying a lot. A few of the points that I take from this interview that jump out to me. First, Tyler talked about how he had to redeem himself at Essex and that he wasn't fully prepared in his first semester. So he took a red shirt, got his academics together, and would go on to be an important cog in the wheels of the Knights teams that would finish in back-to-back Final Fours and once as a national runner-up. He talked about the volunteerism, which was and still continues to be a big staple of the men's lacrosse team for as long as I can remember. He was the CCBC Essex Male recipient of the Community Service Award for the 2015-16 academic year. And it was a special moment for me as he surprised me that same year by presenting me with the department's Student Athlete and Community Service Award for my part in the community service. Finally, the 2015 national semifinal game took a lot out of the team, and they were unable to defeat Onondaga in front of the home crowd in the Kingdom. But you could tell and hear that Tyler learned so much more than winning and losing that weekend, and that his experiences here at CCBC Essex have helped to shape him into the man he is today. Really good time sitting down with Tyler to get into what it meant, what it continues to mean to be a men's lacrosse student athlete here in the Kingdom. That's all the time we have for this episode. Season number 2, episode 8 is in the books. Make sure you follow us on social media. We're at CCBC Essex Sports on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube, both of which are important because that's where you're going to find these podcast episodes. Just search CCBC Essex Athletics and visit us online at ccbcessexknights.com. All of our social media links are in the description of this episode. My thanks to Knights correspondent Rebecca Plantholt, to head men's lacrosse coach Shawn Burke, and former Knight Tyler Oblong. I'm Rocco Geppi. Thank you for joining us on the Kingdom Podcast. So long.